There are many reasons why Donald J. Trump won the US election to become 47th president of the United States. But perhaps one of the most significant reasons was he is going to shut down the influx of illegal immigration into the southern border. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Brian Lilley and Lorrie Goldstein. Brian, we can talk about it was the economy in terms of what has happened in the US over the last 4 years, why President-elect Trump was reelected. But without question, it had to do with shutting down the influx of illegal immigration from the southern border, building the rest of that wall. Americans resoundingly supported that. But one thing that doesn't get talked about nearly enough is what is happening on the northern border, which we have been discussing, which has become an increasingly bigger problem. But with so much focus on the southern border, there's little discussion about what's happening up north. But now, Donald Trump's new border czar, Tom Horman, has had a few things to say about it. Brian, what's his issue?
He looks at the northern border as a real problem, and that's because it is. He's also someone very familiar with it. He grew up just south of Kingston, he'll tell you, West Carthage, New York. So it's a little bit east of Watertown, maybe an hour and a bit south of Kingston, if you will. So he knows the Canadian border well. He talked about in an interview that this is an area where you can get across the St. Lawrence River through the Thousand Islands in about 45 seconds. He clearly knows the area, knows what he's talking about, and knows his stats, which is why he gave a clear warning in an interview with ABC Channel 7 in Watertown.
And the problem with the northern border is a huge national security issue because in my 34 years, a lot of SIAs, special interest aliens, from countries that sponsor terror or are known not to be our friends, come through the northern border because they're an organization that have a lot of money and they can afford to fly into Canada to come across that northern border because they know a lot fewer officers up here in Thousand Islands. You can cross St. Lawrence River in 45 seconds. So it's an extreme national security vulnerability on the northern border, and it's one of the things I'll tackle as soon as I'm at the White House.
He's also quick with stats, Adrienne. He points out that twice as many people on terror watch lists have been caught crossing the northern border than the southern border. And you look at the number of people being smuggled across. Human smuggling has become big business there, not just drug smuggling from the Port of Montreal down to New York City anymore. Human smuggling, almost 20,000 people over the last 12 months, most of them young single men from India who came to Canada on a student visa or a visitor visa and then are caught going into the United States. There's sex trafficking going on. All these things he knows are happening. And he said, we're going to have to work with Canada. We need this shut down.
Lorrie, when we hear them discussing this in the United States, I mean, it's a national crisis for them. Not only is the estimate up towards over 10 million illegals that have come through the border illegally in the last 4 years, but in addition to that number, there are hundreds of thousands of what they refer to as, quote, gotaways. No one knows where they are. No one has any clue what city they're in or what part of the country they're in, or if they're moving north. And that's one of the concerns, is that as Trump is prepared to take office in January, that there is going to be suddenly this influx at the northern border, and Canada is not prepared for that.
Yeah, Chrystia Freeland announced in the last couple of days that, oh, well, in response to this, oh, well, Canadians have always been concerned about border security. Yes, Canadians have been concerned about it. This government hasn't been. Look, a lot of these things predate the Trudeau government. There have been Auditor General's reports year after year that authorities have lost track of tens of thousands of people who were supposed to be deported. We don't know where they are. We have had cases, as you pointed out, of alleged Islamic terrorists, getting the border to get into the United States. Let's look at something else. Allegations that our government is concerned about, that agents of the Indian government are coming here and assassinating Canadians. Well, how did they get in? This oughtn't to be a controversial subject. Canadian government and media should not be alarmed by someone who's going to be put in charge of the border to say, look, we have to deal with the northern border as well as the southern border. Because the reality is either you have a protective fence of competent security around North America or you don't. And if you don't have it, then anything you do at individual border crossings or unmanned border crossing isn't going to mean anything. This to me is another example of hysteria over, look, Trump said he's worried about the borders. He's going to put in a tough guy to deal with it. This is a big surprise to the federal government. But the point is that their approach should be absolutely, because this is one way to establish good relations with the United States. If Canada shows that it is willing to, as opposed to they cross the border, an unmanned crossing, the RCMP takes their luggage to wherever they're going, as opposed to that, as opposed to real borders and recognizing, look, we can't get everybody. This is the largest undefended border in the world. But this is a sensible thing. It's good policy for both countries. For heaven's sake, Trudeau government, work with the Americans on this issue. That would be a good idea. And Canadians, we know Canadians support it. There's numerous polls now about Canadians concerned about the number of immigrants, slightly different issue, but also about the security of the border. So to me, it's like making a problem where the solution is simple. Go and work with the Americans to make all of us more safe. Good idea.
And I think that's wherein lies part of the problem here, Brian, is that there's little to no confidence in this current iteration of the Trudeau government that will be accomplished, not because they don't take it seriously, but I think in part they have a sort of a philosophical recoil when it comes to anything that President-elect Trump wants to do, whether it be border security, whether it be immigration, whether it be tax reform. There's this automatic pushback, but the USMCA negotiation is going to be opened up in a short time as well. So wouldn't working with the Americans to ensure border protection on our borders is a really significant step to having a good relationship with the new administration?
They should have been working on this ahead of time because the Biden administration is concerned. I gave you that number earlier. More than 20,000 people over the last year. We're on track for about 400 people on terror watch lists being apprehended at the northern border. That 20,000, by the way, that's just the stretch from Kingston to the Quebec-New Hampshire border. It's an area called the Swanton District. And you can go online and anyone can go online and find these stats because unlike the Canadian government, the American government's quite open with sharing data. That 20,000 over the last year, that is more than the last 17 years combined. And the Biden administration has been raising this issue. And our government has not reacted properly. Months ago, I was writing that we needed to take the approach that Jean Chrétien did back in 2001 when we were worried about the border closing after 9/11. He basically told John Manley, as Minister of Everything back then, go down, find out what the Americans want, and give it to them. Make sure the border doesn't get clogged. We have, yes, it's the longest undefended border in the world, but think of the trade. Think of the personal travel, the business travel that we all do to the United States. That could be shut down or at least become much more difficult to navigate. So they should have been looking at this months ago. Instead, they did nothing with the Biden administration. As you say, they recoil at Trump. And now they've set up this cabinet committee on Canada-U.S. relations as if it's an emergency that Donald Trump was elected. It was one of two possibilities that were going to happen. They should have been prepared, but they're not. And so you get Chrystia Freeland coming out and saying, she quite literally said, we take border security very, very seriously because the security of the border is important to Canadians and they deserve to know that their border is secure. Kamala Harris style word salad. It's insane. Yeah. They're not ready. They don't take the issue seriously. Immigration Minister Mark Miller said, oh, there's going to be some tough conversations. Okay, enough with the platitudes. let's talk about solutions. I don't think that they're there yet.
Well, Lorrie, as we look forward to October 2025, when a next federal election is to be expected, and as things go now, we are likely going to have a change in government. And if the polls will tighten a bit, but generally speaking, it's likely going to be Pierre Poilievre is going to be Canada's next prime minister. He will likely have a very different approach than the current Liberal government. Last word to you.
To me, when you come in, there's sort of low-hanging fruit you can do. And one of those things would be, if Poilievre becomes prime minister, we're very concerned about the safety of Canadians and Americans, and we're going to do everything we can to ensure the security of both of our countries. But I would like the current government of Canada, because it's still going to be around for months and months and months. And to me, there's still this poison fruit from when Trudeau said, when Trump did the thing in the first iteration of the presidency about, barring immigration from Muslim countries, right? Okay, badly worded. He should have said from countries identified by American officials as containing terrorist threats to the United States. But when he did that thing about you're welcome here, it just set off, they deny it, but the numbers show that the border crossings went nuts at that point. They have done some things to ameliorate that. We have the third-party agreement now and all that. But it's just, it's this knee-jerk attitude that if Trump or somebody who represents Trump says anything, even we have to make our North American borders more secure, they just react as if it's this fascism. It's utter nonsense. Keeping us safe is the most important function that a federal government has. So just do it, particularly because this could be an easy win-win, right? Yes, we're going to take it seriously. We're anxious to talk to the Americans. As soon as we have our officials going down there to talk about, because they can talk to their officials as long as they're not making decisions in a preliminary information gathering. And I hope they're doing that. But it's just it's a solution looking in search of a problem, the way this government operates.
Well, I think the biggest concern is that the incompetence of the Trudeau government is going to make Canadians more vulnerable as the northern border becomes a bigger issue. Well, let us know what you think in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and go to the TorontoSun.com. You'll find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.